Story 1. I keep thinking of the president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, who remarked that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. It seems like they want us to just roll over. Story 2. Remember General Patton said, "No one ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making some other poor soul die for his country." Story 3. I would be willing to die for my country if the politicians in power were also willing to die. I wouldn't fight any war dictated by someone in a suit behind a desk. But if they were fighting for the right cause, that would actually resolve most of the problems, and they were also willing to risk their lives on the front lines with me, then I would have enough respect for the cause. Story 4. For America, none. Our war veterans are treated poorly. Our healthcare system is failing. Democracy is being dismantled, and 1/3 of the population actively supports the deaths of millions. Instead, we sit back and watch the country burn. None of our leaders would defend my life, so I see no reason to defend theirs. After all, our president is a draft dodger. Story 5. I am a middle-aged Canadian woman with no combat experience, so it is easy for me to talk without any real commitment. I cannot say for sure if it is at the initial invasion or resistance, but I can say that for the first time in my life, I am considering where that line is for me. I never imagined that I would need to determine that line in my lifetime, but for the sake of my values, I feel the need to find it now. Story 6. If it meant freeing it from actual tyranny and not from imagined tyranny, then yes, it would be worth it. But if it is to protect Elon and his friends, forget it. Story 7. I am American and a younger black male. This country is not worth, and has never been worth dying for. Maybe others feel differently. Story 8. To protect my family, I will not fight for a country that has contributed to the problems we face today through lobbyists, money-driven politicians, the arms industry, and a flawed healthcare system. Story 9. I would never support people who fight. They don't die for their country. They die for politicians who wouldn't lift a finger to save their lives. Story 10. A very good quality of life, taxes being used for their intended purposes, and politicians being mostly uncorrupted. I'm from Mexico, so I'm definitely not going to sacrifice myself for that corrupt system. If the country provides me with a good life, I will gladly fight for it. Story 11. You only get to live one single time. Short of protecting my immediate family, I will never die for someone else's political causes. Being a slave and finding moments of happiness with fellow slaves would be better than not living at all. Story 12. It depends on the alternative. If a country with a better quality of life wanted to take over my country, I would still be upset with the incursion, but I wouldn't die for it. It would have to be a better quality of life overall, not just for me. If a country that is moving towards authoritarianism with decreasing rights for women or minorities, significant income inequality, and unequal access to quality education at the primary and secondary levels wanted to take over my country, I would fight for my life. Not fighting would mean conceding the rights and quality of life for millions of people, even if it wouldn't affect me directly as much. Story 13. Hello, I am Canadian. With the recent rhetoric from Trump and the Republican Party, I would prefer to wait for surgery as a Canadian than to be under an oppressive regime. Story 14. I would sacrifice anything for some of the people in my country to be safe and free. However, my country feels lost, so there is no reason for me to sacrifice myself for it. Story 15. If Trump truly becomes a dictator, I would fight and die to save the democratic due process of the United States, even if that makes me a rebel or a terrorist. Story 16. There isn't a country on the face of this earth worthy of giving your life for. You mean nothing to your government. They indoctrinate you at a young age to be patriotic and then use that patriotism as a weapon against you when you are older. As a whole, the level of disdain and disregard nations have for their citizens is appalling. Story 17. If there were forces directly threatening the people I love, I would take action. I do not have a strong sense of patriotism, but local communities are very important to me. Story 18. Independence Day, killing the mothership scenario. I led a rather unremarkable life, so it would be meaningful if my death held significance. Story 19. It has been shown that successive governments do not care about the sacrifices made during and since World War II. Story 20. I have been in 5 wars for this country, and at 55 years old, I would gladly sacrifice myself if I could stop the fascist takeover and restore democracy. Story 21. If something is attacking our freedom, trying to change our government, or taking away our way of life or that of our children, I would likely put on the uniform to defend our country. Do I want to die for our country? No sane person does. But if you're not willing to defend your country, then you're not truly a good citizen. Honestly, if you don't want to be here, there are many other places you can live. Story 22. If it were attacked by another country, I would not be dying to save my country but to protect my family. Story 23. If we were being invaded, I would die not willingly to protect those around me. However, anyone would be welcome to step in front of the bullet for me. Story 24. I wouldn't die for my country, but I would die for my daughter who is in this country. So I would die for her. Story 25. I have no enemies. I wouldn't die or kill for my country, and even if I am personally threatened, I will just run away. Story 26. If there are people worth dying for, unfortunately, there are none. Fortunately, I am willing to die regardless, just for the sake of it. Story 27. This country has done so much to convey that we are on our own. There is no retirement, no security, no health care, nothing. This is not a community. What is there to fight for? I have fought for everything I own. If someone wants to come in and change the government, fine. But if you come to my house and disrupt my family, that's a different story. Story 28. If it was attacked or a true American freedom campaign, I don't think that has happened since World War II. What is disappointing is that I would have totally signed up to fight against Osama bin Laden, but then die in a war completely unrelated to weapons of mass destruction. Story 29. For those I care about, dying for the country would mean for everyone in it, including all groups. I would never give my life for that ideology or for those who treated me poorly in this country. Story 30. I am on Social Security disability. I earned that benefit. If it is taken away, I will take action. Story 31. I would find it difficult to risk my life for my country outside of its borders. There are a few situations where I might, but if we were ever invaded, I would be among the first to defend our land, primarily for the children and other vulnerable individuals. Story 32. As a citizen just north of a country undergoing a fascist overthrow at the behest of a relatively calm and docile population, I am genuinely adjusting my entire worldview to accommodate this possibility. I am in touch with relatives abroad to move my family away from danger while I stay and fight if necessary. Story 33. I am Canadian and a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces. It's the people here. Literally everyone who lives here would fight and die for their right to choose how this country is governed. Democracy is the greatest power the people possess, which is why it is the principle I stand by. I will not accept fascism or rule by a select few. I am prepared for whatever happens, and I will confront those who espouse fascism. Story 34. Some would be prepared to do this, believing it is the right thing to do. Others would do this as they see it as the only way to escape an abusive situation. That was how the French Foreign Legion filled its ranks. Story 35. Dying for my country sounds appealing, especially for the wealthy and politicians who have fled overseas, only to return later and give patriotic speeches about sacrifice. Meanwhile, my mother has to bury my body, and my grave becomes a convenient spot for so-called activists. Truly an honor. Story 36. People seem to not realize that a country must have a social contract with its citizens. The country will look after its citizens, and its citizens will look after the country. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. The people did not want to serve their country because they just wanted to survive the day. As a result, it failed as a country. The same could be said for Ukraine and the thousands who left rather than fight for it. Story 37. I would sacrifice my life if my nieces received free healthcare for life and free education. Story 38. I have said this before, but why fight for a government that doesn't fight for you? You all saw the video of the upset veteran at the town hall meeting, right? In July 2022, 11 Senate Republicans, including Mitt Romney and Rand Paul, voted against a bipartisan measure designed to help veterans exposed to toxic chemicals while deployed abroad. In 2017, former President Donald Trump and congressional Republican leaders proposed budget plans that would have severely harmed the economic security of veterans and their families, all to fund tax cuts for millionaires and corporations. There are additional resources that outline many more instances when Trump, who referred to veterans as suckers and losers, treated them with disdain. In 2015, the Republican-controlled Senate voted against a bill to provide $1 billion over 5 years to create jobs for unemployed veterans. The bill was fully funded and would not have added to the deficit. In 2014, Senate Republicans rejected one of the largest pieces of veterans legislation in recent history. The Comprehensive Veterans Health Benefits and Military Retirement Pay Restoration Act of 2014 would have eliminated the military retiree cost of living adjustment reduction and protected veteran pensions and educational benefits from future budget disputes. It would also have authorized the construction of more than 20 community-based outpatient clinics to serve veterans in rural and remote areas. In 2011, Republican Paul Ryan and the House of Representatives attempted to end Department of Veterans Affairs healthcare benefits for disabled veterans classified as Priority 7 and 8. This classification means that veterans with conditions not recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs, such as certain diseases from Agent Orange exposure, would have to pay for health care out of pocket if they did not have another service-connected disability. I have fought for my country. I have fought to do something good for my country. I have fought to make this a better country. Yet, the bureaucrats said, "Forget you. So why fight for a country that doesn't fight for you?" P.S. I did not serve in the military or on a distant battlefield. Story 39. Ignoring that I want to die with or without the benefit of my country, I would die if it would stop a war, lower taxes for low-income families, and raise them for those who have forgotten they can donate their abundance of money. If dying meant a better mental health system, better options for kids and teens who are dropouts, and improved disability programs, specifically for learning disabilities, but all would be better, I would also die for easier diagnoses for women regarding autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Overall, I would die if something would benefit the vast majority of people, if it would benefit them significantly, not just provide more ice cream vans. I am in New Zealand. Story 40. But when the sky darkens and the prospect is war, who is given a gun and then pushed to the front, and expected to die for the land of our birth, when we have never owned one handful of earth? Story 41. If my country were a world federation of humanity united against the extraterrestrial force that has oppressed us for thousands of years, if not tens of thousands of years. Story 42. There is not a single reason I would die for any country. If the country I live in needs people to die for it, I will find another country to live in. Story 43. Well, I am not willing to die for this country because of former President Donald J. Trump and his supporters. The United States that my grandfather fought the Nazis for would be worth dying for, but not this situation. Story 44. The number of people saying none is surprising. I can't blame you, to be honest, but if we were ever actually targeted by North Korea, Iran, China, or any terrorist group again, I would have no problem taking action, not just for this country but also for our neighbors who would most likely be targeted next. Story 45. I grew up in the system and was essentially homeless at 18, so I joined thinking it was the best option. It was not. Please do not follow the same path. I am currently homeless, an amputee in a wheelchair with partial paralysis, and they are taking more of the money that I earned. I would sacrifice for everyone, just not for those who are running this situation. Story 46. The country should probably offer something first. In many ways, we are all already in the process of longing for it. Story 47. If you're talking about America at this moment, there is nothing to consider. Liquidate everything and leave the country. Story 48. For Russia? Willingly? Not a chance. I will surrender the moment I get a chance. I would say this country can go to hell, but it already is hell on earth. Story 49. I am a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, currently working and residing in the United States. I would support Canada in a conflict, but not the United States at this time, so my allegiance depends on the situation and historical context. Story 50. My friends died for me and the others with us. Most of you could suffer. America will always be a beacon of freedom. The worst day in the United States is better than the best in many countries. Believe me on that. Story 51. As an American, I will defend our home soil, the ground I am standing on. I would never consider going to another land. Let the citizens of that land defend it as they see fit. Story 52. If the threat was real, especially on United States soil, and it threatened America, particularly my family, I would fight for my family and, in turn, for America as a whole. I might be tempted to stay home and defend my home, but the reality is that any real military force will eventually overcome my resistance. Therefore, the best course of action is to keep them as far away as possible, which means I would go to the front line instead. Story 53. Absolutely. Visit Arlington National Cemetery. Visit the tomb of the unknown soldier. They sacrificed it all for us. I love our veterans, and everyone in America should too. If not, pack your bags and leave. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.